Vedanta through stories. Story number 3. Shake before use. A child had fallen seriously ill, and its grandmother was asked to look after it. She was given a bottle of medicine which carried a label on which were inscribed the words "Shake before use" in bold letters. Reading those words, she first shook the child briskly and then gave it a dose. In consequence, the child got a relapse of the fever from which it had been suffering. When the doctor came, he was surprised to find it so seriously ill. He began to inquire as to the details of the nursing and discovered the way in which the old lady had construed the words printed on the label. He told her that it was the medicine that was to be shaken and not the child. Vedanta through stories. Story number 2. Queellos Son. A father with his son used to play a boat on hire. Once they had to ply the boat for a long distance and both of them felt exhausted. They stopped the boat and the father went to the nearest market and purchased 12 oranges for both of them. The son went on pulling the oar while the father rested eating the fruits. The father ate 6 out of the 12 oranges, but finding that he was not satisfied, took one more orange, saying, "Who can say how many days more I shall live?" Having finished that, he went to relieve his son, and the boy, after eating all the 5 oranges that were left, went on resting without going to relieve his father. The father, who had got thoroughly tired, said, "Look here, my son, I am very tired. You must come and take my place." The son replied, "Carry on, father. Who can say how long you will live to carry on this work?" Vedanta through stories. Story number 1. Buddha and his disciples. Once upon a time, while Buddha was preaching to his disciples, a thief and a public woman came to listen to his discourse. When the sun set, Buddha said, "The sun has set," and stopped his discourse. The disciples understood that to be the signal for them to go and begin to practice meditation. The thief understood him to mean that now that the sun has set, he could have full liberty for practicing his nefarious profession. The woman also understood the remark as meaning that she should go and prepare to receive her visitors. Vedanta through stories. Story number 23. The king's brother-in-law. A king had a divan who was much devoted to his duty and was very faithful to his master. At his queen's persistent request, the king had to appoint her brother as a high official in the kingdom. The brother-in-law of the king, finding that the divan did not pay as much respect for him as he expected, complained to the king the divan's disrespectful attitude. The king said to the divan, "Divan Sahib, come, people in my palace have been complaining that you do not show sufficient respect to them. The Divan said, Raja Sahab, as God incarnated himself in ancient times in the forms of a bear, his image in that form is respected by all. But that is no reason why people should pay any respect to each and every bear, every boar. Vedanta through stories, story number 24, The Consequences of Attachment. A monk who was living in a city found it unsuitable for his spiritual practices. He therefore repaired to a forest and found its solitude congenial and suitable. One day, however, he found that his loin cloth had been eaten into shreds by rats. In order to get rid of the rats, he procured a cat. But the next problem was how to maintain the cat. Accordingly, he bought a cow with its calf. It now became necessary that there should be somebody to attend on them. He found a boy for doing this work. The boy, however, could not live alone in the forest, so his parents were brought to the forest. The boy grew up and attained marriageable age. He was then married to the only daughter in a certain family. Thereafter, the boy's parents in law also came to live in the forest. These families attracted other families, and the forest soon became a crowded village, which began to expand into a city. The monk reflected that all this was the consequence of his desire to protect his loincloth. Vedanta through stories. Story number 25. Indra and the Gardener. In the sacred city of Benares, there was a beautiful garden full of flower plants and fruit trees of many kinds. One day a cow entered the garden and did a great deal of damage to the plants. The gardener, on finding this state of affairs, came out with a bamboo and belabored the cow so much that it fell down and died. He then became greatly concerned with the consequences of his act, and wanting to get rid of the sin of cow killing, reasoned that the sin had been committed by his hands, and that the presiding deity of hands, namely the king of gods, Indra, was responsible for the sinful act and not he. It is said that the sin learned all about the line of reasoning of the gardener, and approaching Indra told him of the manner in which the gardener wanted to shirk his responsibility. Thereupon Indra disguised himself as a human being, and going to the garden in question, he met the gardener and began to praise the beauty of the flowers, the trees, and the layout of the garden. The gardener, thus flattered, started showing Indra the different beauty spots in the garden. Whereupon Indra said, "This garden defeats even the garden of Indra, who has made it." The gardener said, "I alone have made this garden with my own labor." Indra asked, "Do you mean that you have worked with your own hands?" And the proud gardener said, "With these hands of mine." Indra then appeared in his original form and said to the gardener, "How is it that if you made the garden with your own hands, you did not kill the cow with the same hands?" The gardener was nonplussed, and it is said that the sin of cow killing, who was nearby, at once fell on the shoulders of the gardener. Vedanta through stories. Story number 27. The Butcher and the Cow. Once Sri Ramakrishna was the guest at the house of one of his nephews, where a religious ceremony was going to be performed. One of the uninvited visitors of the host came into the room where Sri Ramakrishna was sitting, and as soon as he left the room, Sri Ramakrishna asked his disciples to get the place cleaned by a sprinkle of Ganges water, and asked his nephew not to retain that servant in his house anymore. The nephew, however, did not pay much attention to what Sri Ramakrishna told him, and the man was not dismissed. Some time later, Sri Ramakrishna came to know that the man had not been dismissed, and told his nephew that if his advice was not followed, he would leave the house then and there. The nephew, consequently, though reluctantly, had to dismiss the man. Realizing that his nephew had not understood the reason why he had given such advice, Sri Ramakrishna called him and said, I shall tell you the story of a butcher and to take a cow to the I shall tell you the story of a butcher who had to take a cow to the slaughterhouse. The cow resisted the butcher's attempt to drag it, and the latter, feeling tired his efforts to take it to the slaughterhouse, tied it to a tree, taking particular care to see that the cow could not get even a blade of grass. He then went to a house where a great feast was going on, and had a hearty meal there. The cow, who had been starving all the time, had now become weaker when the butcher returned after his meal. So this time he could successfully drag the cow to the slaughterhouse. The gentleman who gave the feast and fed the butcher sumptuously, though confident that he had been able to accumulate a lot of religious merit, had to share the major part of the sin due to the slaughter of the cow. That sin has more than outweighed his virtues. It is not desirable that you, by association with a man who appeared to have been a man of endless vices, should become subject to heinous sin unnecessarily. Vedanta through stories. Story number 28. Angels of Vision. A thief once tried throughout the whole night to effect an entry into a certain house, but was unsuccessful. Being dead tired of his work at night, he lay under a banyan tree on the public road and went to sleep. Another thief came that way, and seeing him said, Here is somebody evidently of my profession, who, having been unsuccessful in his efforts, has fallen asleep. Next came a drunkard, and seeing the sleeping man said, Oh, I see a friend who has drunk more than myself, who can neither stand nor sit, nor keep awake owing to intoxication. Then came a saint through the same road. Seeing the man lying prostrate, he said, This man is truly in samadhi. He is blessed indeed. Vedanta through stories, story number 29. Mere learning is not enough. In the age in which Shankaracharya lived, there was a great scholar and servant named Mandana Mishra, who was a supporter of the Mimamsa section of the Vedas. Shankara, in the course of his travels, in which he used to preach and popularize the Advaita Vedanta, found necessary once to defeat the doctrine propounded by Mandana Mishra, and suggested that they should hold a debate in order to ascertain whether karma, the way of selfless work, according to Mandana Mishra, or Jnana, the way of knowledge, according to Shankara, was superior. The two agreed that whoever lost the debate should become the disciple of the other. They found it, however, very difficult to find somebody who would sit as the judge to decide which was the winning party. Mandana Mishra's wife, Ubhaya Bharati, was very learned and well known for her erudition in many parts of the country, and Shankara therefore proposed that she should be the judge. Mandana Mishra agreed, and Ubhaya Bharati had no objection. She sat as the presiding judge over the debate. The debate went on for days together, at the end of which it was clear that it was Mandana Mishra who was defeated. The judge, however, before giving her verdict, said that it could not be said that Shankara had completely defeated Mandana Mishra, because the latter's wife was half of his self, and therefore, unless she too was defeated, Mandana Mishra could not be said to have been totally defeated. Shankara thereupon agreed to have a debate with her also, and Mandana Mishra was appointed as the judge in the debate. As soon as the debate started, Ubhaya Bharati put certain questions to Shankara, to which a married man alone could reply. Shankara was a celibate and was not in a position to answer the question. He accordingly had to ask for 6 months' time, within which he would be able to acquaint himself with the subject and facts to reply to the questions put to him. At the end of this period, Shankara came back and answered all the questions put by Ubhaya Bharati to the judge's satisfaction. Mandana Mishra was accordingly held to have been completely vanquished. He therefore left his wife and home and followed Shankara as his disciple.